In this chapter, we're going to talk about scene preparation. Now, ideally, assets that are being delivered to the lighting department are going to be fully fleshed out, look dev'd, textured, and everything. And that's the case with these. However, the issue here was that these assets were converted from RenderMan originally. Some things were a little bit incorrect. This is a pretty normal thing. I've encountered this many times in my career where I've had to convert assets from one renderer to another, and there's invariably things that go wrong. You want to try to automate that with scripts or something like that, and sometimes things just slip through the cracks, or there's particular scenarios where you have to go and do handwork in order to make sure that things are working properly. I've actually gone through and I've built out the entire scene. And so instead of going through and building it with you, I've actually gone and built it already. And I'm going to step you through it to show you what I ended up doing. So as you can see, first of all, with this render, compared to the previous chapters, you'll see there's a lot of material work that I ended up doing. First of all, I want to talk about Arnold object settings stack. Each one of these Arnold object settings, I found that items that needed some displacement needed to have some updates to their subdivision surface settings. So you can see here, I'm overriding the subdiv type, setting some iterations. Whether this is overkill or not, I'm not sure, but this is what I ended up landing on. And then displacement settings down here under shading. Padding, the bounding box of an object that doesn't have displacement usually needs to be padded a little bit larger in order to accommodate displacements across the edges of things. This is a universal displacement height for whatever objects are set. In this case, I'm just universally displacing, since I think only a couple of objects had it. But if you had different displacement heights for different objects, then you'd need to make different object settings for each one of those. And then displacement auto bump. So what this does is if you don't have enough subdivisions on an object and you're really close to it, it attempts to fill in the details that it's missing with bump map on top of the displacement. Let's move down here. I also made extensive use of this network material edit stack. Hit Control up arrow in our monitor view. You can see we've got quite a strong saturation and colors in the background here. So let's go to our albedo AOV for a second. Actually, let's reset that. You can see this back wall is very saturated blue. We can actually reduce the saturation of that if we want, and that'll be a good example to show you what I was doing for these materials. So first of all, let's go to the Scene Explorer window. I'm just going to expand the whole scene for now. Go back to the viewer, select our camera. So let's find our back wall here, first of all. So there it is. When you click on it in the viewer, it's going to select it in your Scene Explorer window here. From our network material edit stack, let's go ahead and add another entry. I'm going to call this kitchen wall. And so what we need here is we need to find the material that we're going to edit. And a quick way to do that is to use your attribute tab. So if you've selected an object and you look under attributes, you'll see material assign is listed right here. And so you can click on this little down arrow and select in the scene graph, and it's going to jump down in the scene graph to the actual material that you need, which is very handy. And then you just middle click drag it up onto this material location, and then just go ahead and repopulate the kitchen wall. So now we have this available to edit. So what we can do is jump in by hitting Control Enter. We're jumping in the node graph, and we'll see we have a kitchen wall entry here. We're going to jump into that as well, Control Enter. And then I'm going to hit F to focus the material nodes that are in here. This is a very simple material. There's nothing to it. If we expand by hitting this little hamburger menu up here on the left, this toggles different states of expansion of this node to take up more or less space. Let's go ahead and click on that to edit it and go to our base properties of the material. And here you can see is our base color. So if we click on our little thing here, we can go to a color picker. And I'm just going to click on HSV, and you'll see our saturation is pretty high. It's almost 0.6. I'm going to go down to about 0.35. So I'm just going to type that in, or you could slide this if you wanted. Hit enter. And now you see that this has turned green, and this is indicating that you've made an edit to it. So let's go back up to the home here, and we'll go down and do another test render. In this case, I'm just going to preview render it, but we could live render it if you wanted. So we'll just have to go back to our monitor tab here, and we'll go up to our catalog, and we'll just have to wait for this to come back. All right, and now we're looking at the albedo AOV. So you can, we'll right click in our catalog up here on this one to set this as the background, and this is the foreground, right? So left clicking sets this as foreground, right clicking sets that as background. This little eyeball. Once you left click somewhere in here, now you can hit the S hotkey to toggle between foreground and background. And you can see up here, background and foreground switches when you do that. And so here, now we've desaturated our wall color, and I think that's probably good for now. So one thing that's really useful when you're setting up lighting in a scene is using some test objects such as chrome and gray spheres. And so I'm going to show you what I did there to put some in my scene. You can see here I made a group node, and let's dive in here by control entering that. So here we can see I've just made a couple of primitives. So this is the primitive create node. As long as make interactive is set to yes, then you should be able to grab it in the viewer. Let's go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and expand this here. Once you do that, you're going to see our spheres. Give it a good name. Otherwise, it's just called, primitive or something like that. Now notice that I've also added this test objects level, and this actually creates an extra group node here. So if you want more group nodes, you just actually type it in and it adds group nodes for you. And then I have a local material stack. Again, if you make a material, just add a material here. You need to add a shader. So you would Arnold surface, and then the surface type, you would choose a standard surface, and then you can set whatever parameters you need. So here under the gray material, this is, I just turned specular off. This is optional. I find, some people like to put a little bit of a specular. So we go to the base properties here. This is just 18% gray. So pretty straightforward. Now the chrome material is just a, setting the base to 1, the base color to 1, and then the metalness to 1. If we go to specular, I've also set the specular to 1 and the specular roughness to 0. So once we have those, I'm just merging them together, then using some material assign nodes. So once you have these, you could turn this into a live group and export it, and then you could bring it into any other scene that you would like. But it's very handy to have something like this. I'm merging it into my full scene render pass down here. I'm going to enable that. So if you hover over a node and hit D, it toggles enabling and disabling. So I've got this down here rather than putting it up here, because if you put it up here, the problem that you'll run into is that you may accidentally render it in passes that you don't want it, right? So by putting it in a test pass, this is effectively a test pass here, then you're not risking accidentally rendering it. I mean, I've done this in the past where you forget to turn it off, or, you could also just make a prune node and put it under each one of your passes to make sure that you've pruned those test spheres, but I just find it easier to put it here. So let's go ahead and render it with that now. Okay, there we go. We've got our test spheres. You can see the difference here before and after. Now, one step that I didn't take, you could optionally turn off visible to shadows and things like that. If you were going to do that, it was just in Arnold object settings, and then you set a ray flag to turn off visibility. I actually could show you that real quick. Let's find an Arnold object settings. Go back to our Scene Explorer window here. Actually, I'll just put it globally down here. Okay, and then I can just middle click this into a statement over here. And then you go to the ray flags, and then you go to visibility, and you want to turn off cast shadows. So once we've done that, let's go ahead and go back up and try rendering that again. Okay, we're back. Let's see the difference here. And there you can see now my spheres are not casting shadows. So at this point, it would be useful to see some quick renders of all 5 of our shots. Go up to this menu up here, the Shelf Actions button, and go to Start Multiple Renders. You can see a list of all of our passes. We just want the full scene, so I'm going to disable these other 4 passes. We're going to set this to local machine, and we're going to leave our 5 shots over here, and let's go ahead and just do a preview render. So if you notice up here, our shot graph state variable has now changed to the final shot in this list. So what it does is the scene will actually update the graph state variable and launch the render, and then update it again and then launch the next render. So it just runs it through a sequence. So if we wanted to, we could go back, and as we're waiting, you'll see these 5 previews are going to start. Now this window, you can either just shove it out of the way for later, or you can close it for next time. Obviously some pretty rough sampling settings, but you get an idea. Okay, those renders came back. I'm going to go ahead and move my monitor back down here. to the left corner. And if you ever do this and it's disappeared, just hit F and it'll pop it back in. If you actually left click somewhere in here, you can just up arrow and it'll go between the different renders in your catalog. So there you've got a good quick overview. So step back through here. We'll talk about the different shots. This shot here, I would call this a one-off shot. This is not as critical to be completely continuous to the other shots, whereas this would normally be like a key shot, for instance. We'd probably have a lighter set this up, or the lead would set this up first, get it iterated upon and hopefully approved. And once that setup has been done, then we would pass this out. And since these are similar shots, it's often useful to assign them all to the same person if you can. Go up here to the viewer. So here's our shot camera. And you'll notice as we move through here, nothing is updating here because we're set to the graph state variable of the shot. So as you flip through here, you're going to see the different shots update in your viewer because it's obviously going through this variable switch up here. So as we switch that variable, it's choosing which one of these to read in. But up here on the left here, you'll see this sync to project settings. And if you click this checkbox, there's a shot graph state variable that's up here that each one of these renders is tagged to. And so this is potentially useful, especially if you're live rendering. So as you click through, you'll see it's actually updating the graph state variable. Now it's updating the assets that it's importing, but I want you to notice at the bottom here, it is not updating our project settings as far as the timeline. This is something that's set in the project settings. So if you go to the project settings tab, you'll see an out time attribute. And so you could just set this to something larger than all of the shots and then not worry about that here. So you can see these are the different frame ranges of the shots. There isn't a way to automatically update this, but I did get a Python script provided to me thanks to Ruth and different people at the Foundry. They've provided a nice little Python script that you can use. And this only unfortunately works in this live session of Katana. So if you want to use this script, you just copy all the text here. Just go back over to Katana and go to a Python window. You're going to paste it into this bottom window here. And then you hit Control Enter, drop it from down here up into this top, which will tell you that it's executed. Now nothing happened down here yet. Let me just turn the sync to project settings off for a second. If you go up here and change the shot, now you'll see that this is changed to 207. Let's go to the next shot. There, now it's changed this to 225. It's updated down here. So what other fixes did I apply? Let's go back to the node graph for a second. So first of all, this sofa has been translated, and that is just done up here under the transform stack. So again, without this, it moves over there. Now, there's a couple other things that I needed to do. So if we go to shot 1040, animated groups, right? So here's our group of objects here. And you can see that some of these pieces of paper here, there's actually some penetration happening. And so what did I do? I did the similar kind of transform stack. However, I did it on the shot level. And so if you go down here, you're going to see in our edit shots, there is a transform stack. So just enabling that, you can see that that has now fixed the order of papers that are on the ground. And actually, I just copied and pasted that for these other 4 shots. So there are ways that you could just use this or do this once and put it down here, but then you have to maybe set a variable switch to get rid of it for this shot. For this very first shot, I actually needed to do a slightly different translation. And so that's why I've got this separated out. And so this shot I just needed to move the photo a little bit, just a hair. And that's because this photo was penetrating the back piece of paper. And that's pretty much it as far as object settings. And we talked about the materials. I did quite a few material updates. Again, really quick, if I was going to go ahead and modify something, like say I wanted to modify, the sofa or something, I've got a couple of nodes that I have disabled here. So if I was to go to our local camera here, if I enable the isolate, now I've gotten rid of everything else in my scene. So this is a quick way to work on one object. And if I'm going to render this view, I need to set a camera, right? So that's what this is. This is a render settings, and all I'm doing is rendering this local camera. So if I was going to preview render that or live render that, again, this is my test pass. So I can do all kinds of stuff underneath here, and I don't really care what I'm doing because it's just throwaway. So I think I added a little bit of a sheen to it, make it look a bit more like velvet, change the specular. So next chapter, we'll talk about some lighting.